Good day, everyone. The National Association of Women MBAs is pleased to present this webinar entitled, If You're So Great, How Come Nobody Knows Who You Are? My name is Hannah. I'll be your moderator for this session. Please note that today's call is being recorded and all participant lines will be muted during this broadcast. If you need assistance at any time today, please email us at webinars@namba.org. This session will last 60 minutes and include a question and answer period at the end. However, feel free to pose a question at any time during today's presentation. You may enter a question by simply typing it into the question box on your control panel and then clicking the send button. These instructions will be repeated later in the program. At this point, I would like to introduce today's speaker. Jennifer Ransaw Smith, the founder of Brand ID Strategic Partners, a full-service personal branding and elevation agency that specializes in helping professionals, executives, and entrepreneurs leverage their skills and talents and make a name for themselves. For the past 8 years, she and her team have been elevating the visibility, credibility, and influence and impact of their clients within their organizations and their industries. After more than a decade of helping some of the nation's most prominent brands like Burger King, AT&T, Texaco, Clairol, and Coke position and differentiate themselves in the marketplace, Jennifer recognized the urgent need for an agency that positioned people the way that marketing and advertising agencies positioned products and services, with a dedicated team enthusiastically motivated and focused on the elevation of that specific brand. It resulted in the birth of Brand ID Strategic Partners. Called a true visionary by her clients, Jennifer is on a mission to empower her clients and audiences by providing them with effective strategies that can be implemented immediately to make significant changes in how they are currently being perceived. Her goal is to equip her clients with the tools to become the Chief Marketing Officer of the brand called You. She divides her time between speaking, training, and coaching clients on how to become the person to know in their industry. And now I'll let you begin, Jennifer.
Thank you so much, Hannah. I'm looking forward to it. So, good evening, everyone. For those of you on the East Coast, I hope that you're nice and toasty and you survived the blizzard well. And for everyone else, I hope you guys are enjoying great weather. And so what I want to do, my intention is to give you tools, actionable tools, so when you get off the phone or the webinar this evening, that you have some things that you can take in place to help you start elevating your career. So let's get started. And first thing I want to say is the fact is nobody's going to step aside. What I want you to do from here on out is realizing that if you want to increase your visibility, your credibility, your influence, and your impact within your organization, you have to make a decision. Every single person, every single woman on this phone call has an MBA, and you went back to school because you recognize the importance of that degree. And what I want to make sure that you do is you're having your degree and you're having your skill set work for you. And the way that you do that is by learning how to effectively become the Chief Marketing Officer of the brand called You. I want that to sink in for a moment. I want you to visualize if someone was interviewing for the role of Chief Marketing Officer for your personal brand, and their resume reflected all of the things that you did last year. Would that be a person that you hired, or would that be a person that you absolutely were like, you're not going to be on my team? I want you to learn how to become the fiercest advocate for yourself. You think about how popular Scandal is, and one of the things that people love about Olivia Pope is that it doesn't matter what the situation is, it's handled. And that's how I want you to start approaching your career. And I want you to recognize that their skies is truly the limit when you understand that you're able to intentionally start moving things to help you elevate. So let's talk a little bit about who I am. I run Brand ID Strategic Partners. I spent my entire career, I've owned the company for the last 8 years, but I spent my entire career in advertising and PR and marketing. I used to write on commercials on Madison Avenue, and I'm originally from Los Angeles, moved to the East Coast, and when I moved from New York down to Washington, D.C. area to get married, I took a job as a publicist for Newsweek and eventually went to a branding agency in Georgetown, a consulting firm where we worked with clients around the globe. And one thing that still resonates with me about that particular place was their entire philosophy was your brand is your reputation. And if I were to ask you, is your reputation where you want it to be right now? If you say anything less than an 8 or whatever, then we definitely have some room for improvement. And I want you to recognize that everything can be how do I say it, ascended upward. And so we're going to talk about the importance of branding. I'm going to give you strategies to empower you to become a very effective chief marketing officer. And then we're going to have a discussion. Our company specializes in working with executives and entrepreneurs, but a large portion, even though we work with a lot of companies, a large portion of our clients are women. And we work to help them understand the importance of putting that toolkit together, understanding the importance of having a team and having a plan, and helping them really get out there and play a game. Too often, we have clients who, on paper, are absolute beasts. They're killing it. I mean, I literally just signed a client for the next 9 months who's a doctor from Harvard. So we have people who are game changers on paper, and what I am finding more and more, especially with my women clients, is that self-doubt and self-worth play a huge integral part when it comes to someone's brand elevation. And we're going to talk about that a little bit further in this evening, but one of the things I wanted you to recognize is that when you're not seeing yourself as a game changer in the industry, all of your decisions are reflected in that. And so when you look in the mirror and you don't, if I were to ask you who are the top 3 people in your organization who do what you do, or who are the top people in your industry, and you don't recognize and see yourself even in that possibility, then you start making decisions based on not seeing yourself in that possibility. And so what we want to do is we want to change that. We offer full services, and so that is everything from coaching our clients to working with strategy. And many of our clients, we pull an entire team together. So if they want to get their book out on their area of expertise, they want to be on stages, they want to be on television, elevating their self-image and how they look. If they're not great speaking from the stages, then we're bringing a team together to help them elevate how they're commanding from the stages. So it really is a very customized approach that we take with clients. But I want to give you things right now that you can walk away. If you happen to be tweeting and you want to connect with me on Twitter, it's at @JRansawSmith. At Periscope, it's at @JRansawSmith. And if you're going to be tweeting tonight based on this call, then you can use the following 2 hashtags, FierceCMO and Personal Elevation. So what I want you to understand is your brand is your reputation. It is the mental real estate held in the minds of others, and it's basically what people are saying behind your back. Every single day, someone is in a conference room having a conversation at lunch, at a cafe somewhere, saying, you know what, we have a vacancy on this particular board, and we're looking for this particular person. Do you know someone? Someone else is having a conversation and saying, you know what, we have a new project that's coming up, and we need someone with this particular set of skills. Do you happen to know someone who fits that bill? There are so many instances when we go through life just doing what we do, and even those in our close circle of influence have no idea what we do. There's so many instances where you have a close circle of friends, or even friends right outside of that, or colleagues, and they're looking for someone with your skill set, they're recommending, and you have a conversation with them a month or so later, and they're like, oh my God, I didn't even have any idea that you did that. And so what I want you to know is it is your job to ensure that the world knows what you do, what you bring, what separates you from everyone else, and how game-changing you are when you're on that team. So let's talk about why it's important to be a thought leader. It's not just about raising your brand and your visibility, But what we want to do is we want to position you someone as someone who's at the forefront of your industry. One of the reasons is it gives you the ability to shape conversations. It makes you the go-to source of information and upcoming insights, and it allows you to keep your finger on the pulse of what is going on. I want you to understand something, a simple concept, that you don't have to be in your position for 15, 20 years to bring a really keen level of insight and thought leadership to it. You know, I remember speaking to, and this was about 7 years ago, I think, one of the associations of women administrative assistants. And someone raised their hand and she said, I hear everything that you're saying about personal branding, but we're just secretaries. And what I explained to her is that there are countless organizations that would not even function without their secretaries. There are countless people, senior level C-suite executives who don't even know which way to the bathroom without their secretaries. And so if you see yourself as just the secretary, that's probably what you're getting paid for, and that's probably what you're getting compensated for. However, you look at places like Washington, D.C., New York, Chicago, big cities, there are a lot of quote-unquote just secretaries who are executive assistants, or however they frame it, who are getting $500,000 in stock options. You go to New York, there are a lot of people on Craigslist who are babysitting for $20 an hour, and then there are a lot of people who are nannies who are charging $250,000 because of where they went to school and how they position themselves and what they're teaching your kids. So I want you to recognize that when you come and if you approach your job or your career as I'm just learning this, then that's where you're going to be stuck. But if you start expanding the way that you look at what you do and start asking yourself key questions like what new insights, how am I looking at this differently, how am I bringing this, what's my process, then you can literally start building thought leadership from every area, no matter where you are in your career. So when we talk about really positioning yourself and becoming a thought leader and a game changer in your industry, it's going to help you attract more of the right kind of opportunities. We all know that. We all know that 80% of jobs that people get, they're getting from a friend. If people understand what it is that you're doing, people understand what your reputation is, people understand the successes that you've had with previous clients, chances are really strong that your recommendation is going to, you're going to be recommended for other opportunities. It increases your earning potential by far, gives you so much leverage when you are out there really making things happen and have built a reputation and a name for yourself. It keeps you top of mind. When you're always out there, I'm looking in the industry publications and I'm reading about what you're doing. I'm turning on Twitter, I'm looking on podcasts, I'm going to conferences and I'm seeing you on the stage and delivering new stuff. I'm always thinking about you. That allows me to, even when I wasn't thinking about you and an opportunity comes, say, wow, we need to make sure that we have Hannah Akers on this team. So it allows you to provide greater recognition, increases your credibility and prestige, and it also positions you as an industry leader. And these are things that are really important when it comes to making sure that you're leveraging that degree that you have. Here's what it's not going to do. By successfully positioning yourself, you're absolutely not going to cover up incompetence. So it's not about running around, I'm sorry, it's not about running around and touting how great you are if you're not. It's not even really about touting how great you are. That's not what we're going to teach you. What we want you to do is have your work speak for itself, but we want to put you in a position that you're very clear and, shaping that story. It's not going to work if it's a lie. And it's not going to work instantaneously. It's not, all of a sudden you saying, this is who I am, and 2 days later everybody in agreement. It is, how do I show up consistently and repeatedly delivering at this level with this whatever message and whatever angle I'm coming from on a regular basis so that it becomes ingrained in the thought, in the minds of others, so that that is how from then on I am associated. So let me ask you, let's talk about what your reality is for right now. Do you dominate your niche? When I'm thinking about industry thought leaders, I'm thinking about people within your organization who are the best. Does your name come up? Is your phone ringing off the hook with potential opportunities or people who can't wait to work with you? Do you have frequently conversations with people who want to partner and be joint ventures with you? When people are looking for the best of the best within your organization, within your company, are they thinking about you? When the media is looking for a trusted resource, someone that they can count on within your industry, are they calling you? Have you been able to leverage your expertise for additional streams of income? Years ago, you just did what you did and you came home, and now you look at Susie Orman, who years ago was just who would have probably 15, 20 years ago just been a financial planner, and all of a sudden a financial planner now can have their own radio show and their television show, and they can have books out, and they can do workshops, they can be speaking and empowering because they have a specific designated niche, and that goes for every single industry. So now all of a sudden, even if you do something technical, you could put together products and services that help other people who are trying to break into your industry or helping other people understand that particular niche. So it really, the sky has been opened up for so many people to leverage their expertise, whether they're working in corporate or whether they're not. And so when I ask you what your reality is, I want you to be really clear about where that line is, about what the possibilities and how you're currently showing up. I want to share a story quickly. I, about 2 years ago, was speaking at a major healthcare, major meaning it's a multi-billion-dollar agency. And I was speaking at this company, and one of the senior directors came up to me, and she said, "Jennifer, everything you said completely resonated with me, and I recognize that I really need to work on my own personal brand, and so I'm going to get your card from one of your people, teammates, and I'm going to give you a call. I'm going to follow up." And true to her word, she did, probably about 2 weeks later, and she said, first thing, to reiterate how much I enjoyed it. And so what I want to do is when things die down on my end, I'm going to call you. But every couple months she would call and say, I just have so much travel and I haven't even had a chance to get my head above water. I haven't had a chance to focus, actually. And so when I do, I don't want you to forget about me. Then she called back and said, "You're not going to believe, what just happened. We just lost a $1 billion agency. They lost an entire state. Her company was a healthcare, and they had an agreement with a particular state, lost that whole state." Then she called back about a month later and said, "My boss was just let go." Then she called back and let me know that she went from 156 direct reports to 12. So by this time, she's joking, and she's like, "Clearly, I can read the writing on the wall. I know what's going to happen." And we had this call in November, and in December, for some reason, a lot of companies let people go in December. So last December, she was let go. And she had an amazing package. She, was, high up, and she had 6 months full severance. So what she did was she took some time off to travel, and she went to a couple countries, and we regrouped again and had lunch in February. And here is a person who spoke 3 languages, had lived in 4 different countries, was a senior level executive at what she did, and when she looked for a job, when she was back, she was online looking for a job like somebody who had just gotten out of school, going on Glassdoor, throwing resumes over here, like someone who had just graduated from college. Now that situation should have never, ever, ever happened. There should have been no reason that all of the high-level recruiters in her particular industry didn't know who she was. There should have been no reason that she didn't have a circle of influence who didn't know who she was. So here's somebody who a year later, she ended up landing a fantastic job. It took her a year. And it took her taking something else that she didn't like. And it took her really starting to take into her, starts bothering your mindset and causing a depression and stuff. And so the fact of the matter is, what she found herself in, the situation, is what 80 or 90% of my corporate clients find themselves in. They have spent their entire career building the brand of their organization and not any building their own. And I want to make sure that when you get off this phone call tonight, that you have the tools and you know what's going to take to make sure that you're simultaneously, if you're lifting that boat, you're lifting your own. So let's talk about, if I were to ask you on a scale from 1 to 10, how much have you been doing that? Do you find, if I were to ask you, and to be honest, I can't hear you, everybody's on mute, but if I were to ask you to be honest with yourself, on a weekly basis, how much time do you dedicate? How much time is written in your calendar for nothing but your own personal development, personal elevation, connections, that kind of thing? And I don't know you, but I would venture to say that there's a large percentage, over 80, probably 80% of you guys, that that number is very minimal. And what I want to do, without scaring, is help you that do that. Because here's the problem: it doesn't matter how great you are if nobody knows who you are, and that's why you signed up. But it's the reality. And what we want to make sure is that you're building that reputation. The right people understand who you are, and they're saying something about you. One more quick story, because I really want to drive it home that it doesn't matter the level. This happens when a person is just starting out. You've graduated, you have your MBA in hand, and it's your first, 3 to 5 years. This happens when you've been in your career for, 10, 15 years. You recognize, wow, I'm steadily moving up, but at the level that I know what my potential is, I'm nowhere near this. I was brought on to work on a team, and the team was for an entertainment company, and they came up to my state, and they brought someone who was in marketing. And the two of us were brought on as consultants, and so I facilitated the meeting, and I was shaping and doing the branding for this particular individual who ran this company, and he wanted the insight for this person. And so the marketing person, come to find out, up until very recently, had just put her notice in, was the highest ranking woman in a Fortune 50 company in her position, one down from the president, the CEO, one or two down from the CEO in the United States. Her annual budget was $2.5 billion, and her annual sales meeting budget was $1 million. And one of the reasons, when I found out she had just put her notice in and left, one of the reasons that she left was she found out that the gentleman who was working next to her, let's just say next to her, who oversaw $900 million, was making $200,000 more. She had been there 17 years, and that was the final straw. Other things happened, that was the final straw. And so one of my conversations to her, when I started asking a series of questions, everything was probably just like you're saying. No, I didn't do that. No, I didn't do that. No, I didn't do that. Just letting the work speak for itself. And so what I want to let you guys know is, let's not make ourselves vulnerable in 2016. We want to let the world know that we exist. So I want you to imagine what it's like to be a sought after thought leader. I want you to imagine, just really embody what it feels like to have your phone ringing because people are seeking out industry publications, national publications, want to see what you have to say on this particular so what it's like to be invited to keynote breakout sessions at conferences, because people really want to hear what you have to say and your unique perspective and point of view. Becoming invited to be on boards and just doing things that dramatically increase your income. What it feels like to not be your industry's best kept secret or feel like you are invisible. So here is the good news. You are the chief marketing officer of you. And if you had to grade yourself last year and you gave yourself a fail, good news, we're starting from scratch. We're going to build that out, and this year you're going to get an A. If you gave yourself a C, there's still lots of room for growth. So what we want to do is we want to give you the tools. So as the chief marketing officer, what you're going to do is you're going to become the glue of your entire personal organization. I really want you to understand that. That we're going to do things that are measurable. We're going to do things that start oftentimes making you, quite honestly, uncomfortable, because the uncomfort is where the growth happens. If you look at anything that stretches you, that's where the growth happens. And too often we cling to the things that feel like, wow, I have this, I can do this like the back of my hand. There is no room to grow when you're doing things that you can do with your eyes closed. We want to look for opportunities that stretch us, that force us to elevate the way that we're showing up in the world. So here's a tweetable. Your number one client is you. And so I want you to act like it. Don't care what you do. I want you to recognize that every single morning that you get up. You are your number one client. I used to tell my husband that you can tell someone what's important to a person by looking on their calendar. Because what comes up on your calendar is what's important. A lot of people will say, oh my God, you ask someone, what's the most important thing to you? Everybody says family. And then you'll have people who didn't spend any time with their family all month. But what really is important to you shows up. You make time for it. And so what we're talking about tonight are not just concepts that when you get some time, you're going to try to stuff it in. You have a free day next month. There's a holiday, a federal holiday, or so everybody's at home, so you're going to try to do some things. We're talking about reshifting the way that you show up. We're talking about how do you start understanding that if other people are going to put you on, have you working their agenda, you're not going to work anyone else's agenda before you work your own. So if that means that you have to get up at the crack of dawn and do it, then that's what you're doing. If that means you have to, sorry, my phone in the back is ringing. If that means that you have to do it on Sunday evening, then that's what you're doing. But you're making time on a regular basis to work yourself in. So let's talk about the tools to succeed. We want you fierce, focused, and ready to dominate in your particular niche and whatever you're doing. And so 3 steps to becoming this fierce chief marketing officer of the brand called you. We're going to talk about discovery and planning. We're going to talk about developing a clear and concise positioning, and we're going to talk about what you need in your toolkit in order to get it to the next level. And first thing I want to ask you is, what do you want to be known for? Honestly, what do you want to be known for? If you've been in your career and you've been doing your thing, and you're taking a step back and saying, okay, I might love it. I might want to go to the C-suite. I might love it enough. I might want to start my own thing. I have all this years of experience. If I am looking for the best of the best that does, and let's put a blank line and you fill in the blank, what is it that you want to be known for? And oftentimes, that's a very hard question for a lot of us because of this simple fact. There are a lot of us who've built reputations doing things that we really don't like, but we just so happen to be good at it. We've built reputations doing things that don't bring us fulfillment, but it just comes second nature, and everybody has, defaulted and recognized that's our thing, and so they start bringing it to us. But deep down inside, we're slowly dying or we hate it. And so, not necessarily looking at what that degree is for, but what do you want to be known for? My entire education and background, I after undergrad, went to one of the nation's best advertising schools and studied advertising and studied copywriting and wrote commercials and did not love it. I mean, I loved the environment and I loved a lot of aspects of it, but the highlight of my day for years, we're talking almost 20 years now, was working with people. So I loved empowering my direct reports. And it's interesting because you can get good at something. I was a master at writing, I was a headline queen and things like that. But it wasn't what brought me fulfillment. And so I recognized that I wanted to be a public speaker. I recognized that I wanted to write. And so I want to ask you, what do you want to be known for? Also, are you aware of who the top 5 game changers in your industry are? When people are looking for the best of the best and they're not calling you, who are they calling? Why does your industry need what you have to offer? And what is it that separates you from everyone else? What is that clear distinction? Are you familiar? Because if you're not clear about it, then no one else is going to be. And oftentimes, For a lot of us, it gets really fuzzy because you might have a particular position that is a dime a dozen. There might be a ton of people who do what you do, but they might not have your education. They might not have had your success and failure rate. They might not have your point of view because of your background. Like, what, honestly, if you strip everything away, why would I want to do business with you versus someone else? If I had three people who had the educational background that you had, who had very similar experience, why would I want them as opposed to you? If you're not clear on that, no one else is going to be. So, 9 out of 11 effective ways of getting buyer attention is through thought leadership. And this is proven through Hinge Research Institute, which is one of the first institutes out there that is doing a ton of research on personal branding, thought leadership, and elevation and things like that. And they come from cases, speech, I said cases, case studies and speeches, and writing articles and publications and invitations to webinars or seminars and writing white papers. It comes from content. It comes from taking your information and putting it out there. That's how you start building a reputation. Taking information and getting it out there. How much of that are you doing right now? One of the first places we start is with what we call a personal brand audit. And we offer a very extensive audit, but here is some top level things that I want you to think about. I want you to be able to really understand what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are. And I know this becomes something that people say all the time that we kind of just glaze over. But I really want you to understand that. What is that wow factor? How do you view things? What is your perspective? How do others see you? I remember being on a webinar. Probably, it wasn't a webinar actually. I don't even think there were webinars back then. Probably about 6 years ago. It might have been. I was on a phone call with Jack Canfield, who is one of the authors of Chicken Soup for the Soul. And he was talking about how every Friday night he comes home and he asks his wife, on a scale from 1 to 10, I want you to rate me as a husband. And he says, if I wasn't a 10, I want you to tell me what I need to do to be a 10. And he talked about the fact that he could have come home and he could have gotten in his seat and got a beer and like sat back in his lazy boy and turned on the, the football game. And his wife could have had an incident that happened that she just really wanted to get off her chest. But had he not engaged with her, he wouldn't know it, and then he would repeat that behavior and repeat it. Then all of a sudden, they have this huge wedge between them, and they don't even know why, because he never sought feedback. Then he talked about how few of us look for feedback in our lives. And if you think about it, how often when we get feedback, when we're doing the 360 review at work or when we're hearing something from a superior, how we get defensive. And you recognize that, just say, if you were a corporation and someone said, we had a problem with your, burgers, or we had a problem here, you're not offended. You just say, what is it going to take for us to fix this and make this problem go away? But when it's a person, you feel like it's a direct attack. And so what I want you to do is start shifting the way that you look at feedback. I want that to be something that you are seeking on a regular basis, because you can't, you can't change what you don't acknowledge. And I want you to really recognize where those gaps are. So it's not as if you're working on an island. And so you can just be killing it and think that you're killing it, or let's just say that you could think that you're killing the game, and other people could have an entirely different impression. I remember my last position, I had a group of direct reports, and I had 2 direct reports who we were both of their first jobs. One was from Texas, one was from California. They both relocated to work at our agency. And I remember both of them were really, really, really hard workers. However, their approach was completely different. And one was a hard worker, and she was, conscientious about what she did. but she pretty much did what you asked her to do. The other person not only didn't do just what you asked her to do, she did a lot more, but she was very skilled and savvy in other ways. So when the senior executives would come down to the office, we had multiple offices. When they would come to visit, she was always looking for an opportunity to, jump in front of them and let them know what she was doing. When she was in, meetings or whatever, she was, more visible and raising her hand. So she had this whole other dynamic going on simultaneously with delivering what she was asked to do. And the reason I bring this up is that a year after I left my agency to start my company, so this must have been 7 years. I celebrate 8 years this month. This must have been 7 years ago. Um, that particular office was closed. We were really close to headquarters, and they decided to kind of merge. And a lot of people were let go. So out of 35 that were in our particular office, I think maybe 33 or 31 were let go. And amazing talents, not just, I'm talking about we were a top firm, one of the top 100 firms in the country. So amazing talents. But the woman who I told you waited pretty much for, opportunities to come and kind of was more reserved was, of course, one of them. The one who was more outgoing, and I don't even want to use the word outgoing because I think that's kind of irrelevant, who was more strategic in her approach to making sure that she was in the right kind of opportunities and the conversations were being had behind, closed doors about her. Not only was she retained and moved to the headquarters, but 2 years later, 3 years later, she had been allowed to go back to her home state and open up an office, and now is a VP. So my point is, the person who was let go, had she been aware of what her things were on a deeper level, it might have changed the way that she was showing up. And so what I want you guys to recognize is a lot of times you're not going to hear just what you want to hear, or just what's going to help you in your 360 review. I'm talking about what it means to have conversations with those that are around you, those that are colleagues, those that are competitors, those that are no longer clients of yours, or those who were clients who both were successful and unsuccessful, to see what it is that you could do that could be better, that help you, so you can take it to the next level. One of the best ways to do it is SurveyMonkey. SurveyMonkey is free, and SurveyMonkey allows you to ask other people what their views are. So, I want you to ask them, say, I'm working on my brands 2016. I've, pulled together 10 to 15 or, 10 people, and I really want to get honest feedback. Can you tell me where you see the gaps? If you were to recommend me to somebody else, what would you say? If, you're looking at people who are strong in my industry, who do you think they are? Who do you think my competitors are? What do you think my blind spots are? Really start getting kind of feedback, because it probably will blow your mind. You didn't even know. And instead of, and let people know up front, I'm going to make it anonymous, and I want you to be as honest as possible. I am not going to get, an attitude or whatever. And then take it like that. Take it like I am a brand, and I'm really trying to take it to the next level. I want you to get really clear on who your competitors are. And I use competitors loosely, but the reality is, with social media, with things, that you're always replaceable. And so you need to understand who the industry players in your industry are. There's so many people who don't even know. You're a copywriter, but you couldn't even tell me the top, other than a couple other people, the top 10 copywriters that are in your organization, who are winning the awards. I mean, not in your organization, in the country, who are winning the awards, who are, who's in the one show, who's getting the pencil. I want you to understand, when you're going to conferences in your industry, who is being asked to keynote. What are they bringing to the table that you aren't? Who's being asked to speak at in the breakout sessions? Who is writing columns? When journalists are looking for a quote from somebody who's an industry insider and they want a trusted resource, who are they calling if they're not calling you? So that you need to think about those kinds of things. Some resources that can help you. One thing is the Kolbe report. It's Kolbereo, report. Everybody knows how to spell. Another is Stand Out, and this is Marcus Buckingham, Strength Finder. And there is a book that I would recommend, and a woman who's fantastic, who It's called How the World Sees You by Sally Hogshead, and she does personal branding, but on a level, I mean, like a global level. She has researchers and things like that, and so I really would have you get some of her stuff because you want to see how other people see you and where those gaps are, and she's developed some amazing tools to do that. So be sure to, I know that they're going to upload this, you'll be able to go back and refer to it, but I mean, like, really take the time to start saying, if I'm doing an audit, let me see where those gaps are, let me see what my strengths are, let me see how what I want to do, and then, how I can kind of change that. Let's talk about positioning yourself. You need a platform, and it needs to be focused. We're talking about what it is that you do and really understanding the importance of having a focused message and being niched down. Is it focused enough that it can be written down in 2 sentences? You'll be blown away by the amount of people who simply couldn't tell you what they did very quickly. And then you leave and you're confused. So if that's the case, then you think about the fact that there's so many opportunities that can never get to them simply because it's just so much confusion. Is it clear, concise, and intriguing? Does it provide a solution to a new or existing problem, a new way of thinking about an issue, a new way of thinking that contradicts traditional thinking? I want you to develop thought leadership in your area. Let's talk about using your community to conduct research. There's chances are, at any level that you are, you're probably doing something over and over again. You've probably spotted some gaps. You've probably said, this could be done better. I want you to start recognizing that's what thought leadership is. Understanding, polling your people, looking at your success, case studies, digging deep in your industry. There's so many people who, if their organization doesn't subscribe to their industry publication, they don't read it. Now let's think about the logic behind that. You have an MBA, you spend all this money going to school, and you're going into an industry to become the best of the best. You want to be compensated highly. You want to be sought after by companies big time, but you probably don't, a lot of people don't even subscribe and take the time to subscribe to the top 3 industry publications that are coming. So therefore, they're not keeping their finger on the trends that are going on. They couldn't tell you the new insights that have just been dropped. They couldn't tell you about the new program that was just launched at a institution or university. I want you to start treating yourself like you're an authority in your field and asking yourself this question. If I were one of the leading authorities in my field, what would I be reading? What articles would I be reading today? Do I have the RSS feed to those? What blogs would I be reading? What industry experts would I list out and connect with on Twitter? What social media commentary would I be reading? What books? Look at your industry and how many books were released this year. Are you reading them? Do you know which ones were great, which ones were not, where the gaps are, what you would do differently? Have you written a review about them on Amazon? I want you to have a clear opinion and be that deeply ingrained in what it is that you're building and what it is that you're doing. You want to also really start considering elevating your visibility by building your credibility and putting certain things in. What are the speaking topics? Let's talk about getting you out there on stages and speaking in your industry, even if it was just at your industry association. Let's talk about looking at having you formally put together case studies of what you're working on. Testimonials from clients. I'm going to share, going back really quickly, this is what I call our industry personal elevation toolkit. And like I said, it's going to be uploaded, so you will have it. But I just want you to, when I'm going through, just to think about what it is that you have and where those gaps are. So here's our industry engagement essentials. You want an executive headshot no matter where you are in your organization, if your organization has paid for you to get one or not. Like ASAP. By the end of February, I want you to have one. There's so many amazing photographers. Make the investment, have a fantastic headshot, and start building your executive presence and credibility right now and not wait for your organization to say, okay, you're in the C-suite and we're going to send out the company photographer. Do it now and start overseeing your brand. I want you to have an executive bio written up. I want you to have a bio that's written up that talks about your expertise and the kinds of projects that you work on and your point of view and what you bring right now. So if someone says, I want to interview you, send over your information, you have something, and you're not just sending them to your LinkedIn page. I want you to start talking about what your signature talk would be. If you look at your industry and you look at what your niche is and what it is that you do and what separates you from everybody else, what would that signature talk be? Like I said, I've been an entrepreneur for 8 years, run my business for 8 years. I have a fantastic team, and I speak, at large organizations, like I speak at Duke several times, where I talk to all the women at their nuclear plants, to smaller companies. And literally, my signature talk is, if you're so great, how come nobody knows who you are? You don't have to explain it. When someone hears it, they know exactly. Now, there are a million other times I talk about different things. But normally, if I'm going somewhere, someone hasn't been introduced to me, and we're giving someone just the basics, that's what my talk is, and it's evolved. So I want you to start thinking about what your point of view is and what your signature talk can be, and then from there we build out a speaker sheet. Associations, well, clearly you belong to one because you're on this phone call tonight. So how are you leveraging your industry associations? Besides the MBA, every single person in here is in a particular industry. What are you in that industry association? Which ones are you involved in? Are you in a committee? Are you on a board? Are you leveraging those relationships and really building them out? Are you getting your industry publications? Are you writing for them? Do you know who are the top writers in your industry? If I ask you the top 1 or 2, top 3, top 10, do you even have, like on Twitter or on social media or any place, where you've listed out and you've brought them all together and curated that content so you're staying on top of what it is that they're doing because they cover your industry? Industry conferences. If your organization is not paying for you to go, do you not go? Or do you say, you know what, I am really taking myself to the next level, and even if I'm only sending myself to one conference a year because my company is not sending anybody this year, that's what I'm doing. I'm making the investment in me. So I want you attending industry conferences. I want you serving as keynote eventually. But right now, let's start with conducting a breakout session. Last time you were at a conference and you were sitting down and people were talking, did you have aha, like, wow, I could be doing this better? And industry awards, we want you submitting. I want you to start putting together a strategy, put together a binder, and I want you to think about really getting clear and taking it seriously. Sunday night, tends to work for me, a lot of my clients, but if not, then sometimes people get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and do it once a week. Sunday night, spend some time pulling all of your stuff together. Where are the opportunities? Where are the gaps? Am I clear? I really want you to start taking the part, and also elevating your image for success. The way that you show up, I want you showing up like where your end destination. Can people look at you? Can people look at what you do, how you're delivering, how you do a presentation when you walk in the room? Do you exude someone who is changing the game, or do you look like you're struggling and trying to find out where you're trying to go? So we want you to start elevating all across, because there is an air that people have that says, she's somebody I need to pay attention to. And so I want you to start asking yourself and being more conscientious about, changing the game throughout. Personal elevation means that across the board. I'm doing personal development. I'm working with a coach. I'm pulling a board of directors together. I am expanding my circle of influence. I'm doing all the things that it takes for me to understand what, how to get to the next level. And so I want you to recognize that you're running your own race. The only competition that you have is the person in the mirror. But I don't want you looking at your journal, if you journal every single year, and feeling like you're in the same space. I think that there is no reason that you should end 2016 anywhere near where you ended 2015. We want you to start catapulting and taking giant steps and, deciding where you're trying to go. So I want you to recognize, we have a whole campaign where we talk to our clients about what it takes to become undeniably fierce. And every single one of you, you have the potential to be undeniably fierce. And so I want you to take these tools that we discussed and start making room for yourself to take it to the next level. A couple of things before we open up for questions. I want you to recognize that you're your biggest asset, and investing in yourself is the biggest 401k you're going to ever have. I want you to understand that you're in a position to create more of an expert status no matter where you are in your organization. I want you to become the go-to person, and I also want you to start getting really clear and having very clear goals and making sure that your daily activities are in alignment with your values and where you're trying to go. Um, Two more things. I want you to start a wow file. Too often, life like knocks us out, and we forget how undeniably fierce we are. We get really caught up in a lot of stuff, and we forget all the wins that we have. I remember I was speaking at Duke, and one of the highest ranking women at Duke Energy was talking about how she has an app on her phone, and every single time something happens, she writes it down, and on the December 1st, she pulls that out and reiterates it and sends it to her boss. But the reality is, if you have a significant win this month, um, and you do really well next month, but the next 4 months are terrible, you're not going to remember that significant win. And so you're going to look at yourself through the lens of the terrible. And what I want you to do is have a place that you can go that reminds you how dope you are. And so that's going to help you start catapulting and pushing yourself towards other things. And I want you to set up alerts so you can start staying on top of what's going on in your organization, in your industry, and putting things together so that you're getting out there and speaking and that you're introducing yourself the appropriate way. I know that we have, I'm going to sit here on resources. I know that we have a Q&A time, so I want to just open it up so we have like another 5 minutes of questions. Here's my website, personalelevation.com, and if you want to email me, it's Jennifer@brandidsp, strategicpartners.com. So Personal Elevation and Jennifer@brandid. And the final thing is we have a program, but I know that we're out of time, and so I can email you guys. But we have an amazing program that's just 30 days. It's an email called Boost Your Status. You get a very detailed email with resources and videos and things that walk you through how to put together foundationally. Here's where you're doing for your headshots. Here's what you're doing for your bios. Here's how you build out a speaker sheet. It's fantastic, and we have cut the price, so it's only $97. It is a ton of information, and if you're interested, you can email me, but we will love to get you started on that program. But I know that we have questions, so I'm going to turn it over to Hannah so she can ask.
Thank you, Jennifer. We'll give everyone a few more minutes to type their questions in, and just
Okay.
as a reminder, you can send your questions in through your control panel. Here's a question. When did you know that you wanted to make the switch from doing your day job or your career in advertising to doing your own personal branding venture?
That's an excellent question, and I actually, my former boss, who is still a very good friend, I would come sit in her office, and literally, like I said, the highlight of my day, the only thing I wanted to talk about was developing, the brand of my all my direct reports. And so I had such an itch that I really started infusing personal branding into my job, and I wasn't being paid for that. So I brought in a speakers bureau. So I started a newsletter that was company-wide and showing people information. I mean, to the point that people, the senior executives, would come down and say, "Oh, yeah, I didn't get your newsletter this week." We started a formal library. I mean, like I was looking for every single opportunity because it was so. You can't hide from that still small voice inside of you telling you, kind of guiding you. And I would say that that's what you pay attention to. It doesn't matter how great things look, because I've had clients who are doing on paper, it's just they're annihilating the game and they're not happy. And so understanding that if you listen to, I call it your internal GPS, it's always going to point you in a direction of where you're going to shine. And so even if you're inside of a situation that's not it, start listening to it so you can kind of pivot that way and see how you can infuse it until you can make the bridge in order to go to do what you want to do.
Great, thank you. Would you recommend using a coach or taking steps of personal development, or both simultaneously?
I would recommend both. And the reason I say that is I read an article about 6 years ago, and it was in Forbes magazine, and the cover was, I think it was Bill Gates. It was Forbes or Fortune, one of those. You could Google it. And it was called The Best Advice I Ever Received. And one of the pieces of advice has stayed in my mind since then, and this was like 2008 or 9. And it was from Eric Schmidt, who used to be the CEO of Google. Now he's the chair. But he said the best advice I ever received was to hire a coach. And he said, I was really dumbfounded because the person, my mentor, who told me that, I looked at him and I said, I'm the CEO of Google. And he said, there's nobody on the planet who can do what I do. So why would I need a coach? And he said he helped me understand that a coach doesn't play your game. They help you look at it and make it better. And so as I have started working the last 8 years or whatever, I've made sure that I've had someone. And what it does is, if you look at people who are really changing the game at any level, I mean, Tony Robbins was Bill Clinton's coach, for God's sake. I mean, people who are out there making a change, he's Donna Karen's coach, are really, they're doing so because they have the right people on their team. And, you know, some people have board of advisors, some people have board of advisors and coaches, executive coaches. I think that we need people at different areas and different parts of our lives to elevate, because you can't have all the answers.
Great, thank you. What role do mentors play in the personal branding journey? Should you seek them out as part of the process?
Yes, and I think that I think a lot of times we get confused about feeling like the mentor has to be what is it called, a more formalized. I think that there are going to be lots of situations that you gravitate towards, or you find someone and you can learn from. But I also think because of technology and because of a lot of other things that are out there, you can have, I mean, Oprah has mentored millions of people and they've never met her, you know? Through YouTube, you could literally have the best of someone's knowledge because they put everything on video and watch that. So I think that you'll have situations where you have a quote-unquote formal mentor. You'll have, hopefully, people who are sponsoring you and behind closed doors and advocating for you. And then you'll have people that you are just, I've decided that I want to learn from this person. I'm going to get every book they've read. I'm going to read every article they've written. I'm going to watch every video they've done and listen to every audio. You know, so I would look at both. I would look at, where am I trying to go? Who are the people there who've done it? And then start immersing myself, but not just be so dependent on, wow, let me go and see in the halls who can, you know, who can kind of mentor me, because I have had lots of clients who are at major global companies and they don't have anyone. And they're, you know, like, oh my God, I have no one here. And they're at companies where the policy is we don't do hand holding. We expect you to come from the Ivy Leagues. We expect you to perform. So they're not going to always be people in that formalized, but I do believe that there is enough information out there. You decide who you want and you go immerse yourself.
Wonderful, thank you. And it looks like we are out of time. So with that, we conclude this presentation. Thank you all for joining us today, and special thanks to Jennifer for a great presentation. Just a reminder, a recording of this webinar will be available online at namba.org/webinar-recordings. For any questions, feel free to contact us at webinars@namba.com, or webinars@namba.org, my apologies. And thank you so much, Jennifer. This concludes.
Thank you for having me.
It was very wonderful, thank you. This concludes today's program. Thank you. You may now disconnect.